The steady beep of medical monitors echoed through the private room on St. Clair Hospital's neurology floor. Allison Parker adjusted her scrubs and checked her watch. 7:15 a.m., right on schedule. She pushed open the door to room 412, where the morning light filtered through partially drawn blinds, casting gentle shadows across the face of Nathan Richardson. "Good morning, Mr. Richardson," she said, her voice carrying its usual warmth as she moved to open the blinds. "Looks like we're in for another beautiful Boston day. The cherry blossoms are starting to bloom in the garden downstairs. I think you'd love them." 6 months. For 6 months, she'd started every morning shift exactly this way, talking to the Comatose CEO as if he could hear every word. Her colleagues had initially given her odd looks, but they'd grown used to it. Some even claimed that Nathan's vital signs seemed more stable during her shifts, though Allison tried not to read too much into that. She began her morning routine, checking his IV lines and monitors while updating him on the hospital gossip. "You wouldn't believe what happened in the cafeteria yesterday. Remember that grumpy old coffee machine I'm always complaining about? Well, it finally gave up the ghost, right in the middle of the morning rush." Allison moved to check his temperature, her fingers gentle against his wrist. "The administration says we're getting a new one next week, but knowing how things work around here, we'll probably be caffeine deprived until Christmas." Something about Nathan Richardson's case had captured her attention from day one. Maybe it was the mysterious circumstances of his accident, a successful CEO's car somehow veering off a clear road on a sunny day. Or perhaps it was the parade of expensive suits that filed through his room daily, more concerned with papers and signatures than the man lying in the bed. "Your brother Lucas stopped by again yesterday," she continued, recording Nathan's vital signs in his chart. "He seemed preoccupied. Kept asking about your condition, whether there had been any changes." She paused, remembering the cold efficiency in Lucas Richardson's eyes. "I don't mean to overstep, but something about him always feels off." The morning sun now fully illuminated the room, highlighting the stark contrast between Nathan's current state and the magazine covers featuring him that Allison had seen. In those photos, he'd been the epitome of corporate success. Sharp-suited, confident, with penetrating blue eyes that seemed to look right through you. Now, despite the excellent care he received, 6 months of unconsciousness had left their mark. "Time for your morning care," Allison announced, gathering her supplies. This was their most intimate time together, when she'd help clean him and change his position to prevent bed sores. "I read about your company's new tech launch in the papers. The Richardson tech stock is up 15%. I'm sure that would make you smile." As she carefully washed his face, her movements gentle and practiced, Allison continued her morning monologue. It had become therapeutic for her too, these one-sided conversations. Sometimes she shared things she'd never tell anyone else. "No, I've been thinking about going back to school," she confided, moving the warm washcloth across his shoulders. "There's a nurse practitioner program I've had my eye on. My mom thinks I'm crazy to take on more student loans, but," she sighed, wringing out the cloth. "Sometimes you have to take risks to move forward, right?" The morning routine continued, punctuated by Allison's quiet commentary about everything and nothing. She was just describing the new coffee shop that had opened across from the hospital when it happened. A twitch, so slight she almost missed it. Allison froze, her hand hovering over Nathan's arm. In 6 months, she'd learned not to get excited about small movements. They were often just reflexes, meaningless in the greater scheme of things. But something felt different this time. Then his fingers moved. Not a twitch, but a deliberate motion wrapping around her wrist with surprising strength. Allison's heart stopped. She looked up to find Nathan Richardson's eyes open, looking directly at her. Those famous blue eyes, now clouded with confusion and fear, searched her face desperately. "You..." His voice was hoarse from disuse, barely, more than a whisper. "Who are you?" The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Allison's medical training kicked in automatically even as her mind raced. "I'm Allison Parker, your nurse. You're at St. Clair Hospital in Boston. You've been in a coma for 6 months following an accident." Nathan's grip on her wrist tightened. "Your voice," he rasped, his brow furrowing with concentration. "I know your voice." Before Allison could respond, the room burst into activity. The morning rounds team had arrived, led by Dr. Rodriguez, who quickly took charge of the situation. Allison found herself pushed to the periphery as doctors and specialists swarmed around Nathan's bed. She watched as they performed their assessments, her wrist still tingling where he had grabbed her. In all her years of nursing, she'd never experienced anything quite like this moment. The way he'd looked at her, the recognition in his voice when he mentioned her voice, it sent shivers down her spine. "Nurse Parker," Dr. Rodriguez called, snapping her back to reality. "Please notify Mr. Richardson's family and contact PR. They'll need to prepare a statement." Allison nodded, moving toward the door. As she reached for the handle, she heard Nathan's voice again, stronger this time. "Wait." She turned. Through the crowd of medical professionals, those blue eyes found hers again. "Don't go far," he said. "Please." "I'll be right back," she promised, her voice steadier than she felt. As she closed the door behind her, Allison leaned against the wall, taking a deep breath. In a few minutes, this quiet corridor would be chaos. Lucas Richardson would arrive with his entourage of lawyers. The press would start gathering outside. Nathan's fiancée, Claire Whitmore, would sweep in with her designer perfume and perfectly manicured nails. But for now, in this moment, Allison allowed herself to feel the weight of what had just happened. The man she'd talked to every day for 6 months, the man who had somehow become a confidant despite never speaking a word, was awake. And somehow, impossibly, he knew her voice. She pushed herself off the wall and headed for the nurse's station. There were calls to make, procedures to follow. But as she walked, Allison couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The quiet mornings, the one-sided conversations, the peaceful routine she'd built, it was all over now. What she didn't know yet was that this was just the beginning. Nathan Richardson's awakening would set in motion a chain of events that would unravel carefully constructed lies, expose dangerous secrets, and force both of them to question everything they thought they knew about love, loyalty, and trust. But for now, Allison picked up the phone and dialed the first number on her list. "Mr. Lucas Richardson, this is Nurse Parker from St. Clair Hospital. Your brother is awake." The next 48 hours at St. Clair Hospital transformed into a whirlwind of activity. Nathan Richardson's private room, once a quiet sanctuary, now buzzed with an endless parade of doctors, specialists, and family members. Allison watched it all unfold from the periphery, maintaining her professional distance while something tugged at her heart every time Nathan's searching eyes found hers across the room. "His cognitive functions appear remarkably intact," Dr. Rodriguez explained to the assembled group of Richardson family members. "However, there are significant gaps in his memory, particularly surrounding recent events and personal relationships." Lucas Richardson, impeccable in his tailored suit, leaned forward in his chair. "What exactly does that mean, doctor? What does he remember?" Allison, standing by the door with Nathan's chart, noticed the sharp edge in Lucas's voice. His perfectly composed expression couldn't quite hide the calculation behind his eyes. He retains most of his general knowledge, language, basic facts, how to use everyday objects. But personal memories, especially from the past few years, are fragmented or missing entirely. Dr. Rodriguez paused, glancing at his patient. "Mr. Richardson, would you like to explain what you're experiencing?" Nathan shifted in his hospital bed, his movements still careful and measured after days of physical therapy. "It's like looking at a photo album where half the pictures have been torn out. I know I'm Nathan Richardson. I know I run Richardson Tech. But the details—" He shook his head, frustration evident in the set of his jaw. "They slip away when I try to grab them." "And what about me, darling?" Claire Whitmore stepped forward, her designer heels clicking against the floor. She perched on the edge of Nathan's bed, reaching for his hand. "Surely you remember us." Allison couldn't help but notice how Nathan's fingers remained limp in Claire's perfectly manicured grip. His eyes flickered briefly to Allison before returning to his fiancée's face. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "They tell me we're engaged, but I don't remember." Claire's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide her flinch. She withdrew her hand, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her silk blouse. "The doctor said this might happen. It's temporary, of course. Once you're home, surrounded by familiar things." "Actually," Dr. Rodriguez interjected, "I'd recommend against rushing Mr. Richardson's discharge. While his physical recovery is progressing well, the psychological impact of memory loss can be severe. He needs time to adjust in a controlled environment." Lucas stood abruptly. "Time isn't a luxury we have, doctor. The board is getting restless. Without Nathan at the helm, our competitors are circling like sharks." He turned to his brother. "You need to come home, get back to your life. It's the fastest way to recover your memories." Nathan's heart rate monitor picked up slightly, a detail only Allison noticed from her position by the vital signs display. She'd learned to read those numbers like a second language over the past 6 months. "I think," Nathan said slowly, "I'd prefer to follow Dr. Rodriguez's recommendation." His voice grew stronger as he continued. "Everything feels overwhelming right now. The only thing that seems real is—" He stopped abruptly, his eyes darting to Allison again. Claire noticed the look. Her perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together as she studied the nurse who had been hovering quietly in the background. "Have we met before? You seem familiar with my fiancé's case." "Nurse Parker has been Mr. Richardson's primary care nurse throughout his coma," Dr. Rodriguez explained. "She's been instrumental in his care." "Really?" Claire's tone carried a hint of frost. "How dedicated of you." Before Allison could respond, Nathan spoke up. "She talked to me." Everyone turned to look at him. "During the coma, I couldn't move or respond, but I heard her voice. Every day. It was like a lifeline in the darkness." The room fell silent. Claire's expression hardened almost imperceptibly, while Lucas studied Allison with new interest. She fought the urge to shrink under their scrutiny, keeping her professional mask firmly in place. "That's actually quite common," Dr. Rodriguez said, breaking the tension. "Many coma patients report awareness of their environment, particularly voices. It's one reason we encourage family and staff to speak to unconscious patients." "How fascinating," Lucas said smoothly. "We're all very grateful for your dedication, Nurse Parker. Now about the discharge planning." The meeting continued, but Allison's attention kept drifting to Nathan. He looked exhausted, overwhelmed by the competing demands of the people around him. When Dr. Rodriguez finally cleared the room for Nathan to rest, Allison lingered to check his vital signs one last time. "They mean well," Nathan said quietly once they were alone. "But they all want me to be someone I can't remember how to be." Allison adjusted his IV line, aware of his eyes following her movements. "Recovery isn't a race, Mr. Richardson. It's okay to take time to find yourself again." "Nathan," he corrected, "please. I hear Mr. Richardson and I look around for my father." He caught her hand as she checked his pulse. "Your voice, it's the only thing that feels familiar, real, when everything else is like a story someone else told me about my life." Her heart stuttered, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm sure more memories will return with time." "And if they don't?" His blue eyes held hers. "What if I don't want to be the person they're trying to make me remember?" Before Allison could answer, a knock at the door announced the arrival of the physical therapy team. She gently withdrew her hand, ignoring the lingering warmth of his touch. "Get some rest when you can," she said, moving toward the door. "I'll see you tomorrow morning." "Allison?" She paused, looking back. Nathan's expression was troubled. "There's something about the accident. Something important I need to remember. But every time I try, it slips away." A chill ran down her spine. "Try not to force it. Sometimes memories return when we stop chasing them." She left the room, her mind churning. In the corridor, she nearly collided with Lucas Richardson, who was speaking intensely into his phone. "Don't care what it takes. Keep those documents sealed. If anyone starts asking questions about the accident, he spotted Allison and smoothly changed his tone. Yes, my brother's recovery is our top priority. I'll call you back. Their eyes met for a moment. Lucas's smile didn't reach his eyes. Nurse Parker, I trust you'll continue taking excellent care of my brother. It wasn't a question. As Lucas strode away, Allison couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just witnessed something she wasn't supposed to see. Something that made Nathan's mysterious accident seem far less accidental. She glanced back at room 412, where Nathan was now working with the physical therapist. The man who had woken up was caught between who he was and who everyone wanted him to be. And somehow Allison had become his only anchor to truth, a role that was becoming more dangerous by the day. 3 days after overhearing Lucas's suspicious phone call, Allison found herself working a rare evening shift. The hospital corridors were quieter now, painted in the soft oranges and purples of sunset. She'd switched shifts with another nurse, telling herself it was just to help a colleague. But deep down she knew it was because Nathan had mentioned having trouble sleeping at night. The click of expensive heels against tile made her look up from the nurse's station. Claire Whitmore was approaching, designer handbag swinging from her arm, face set in determined lines. Nurse Parker. Claire's voice carried the polished edge of old money. I hope to catch you. Do you have a moment? Allison nodded, following Claire to a quiet corner of the waiting area. The socialite settled into a chair like it was a throne, gesturing for Allison to sit across from her. I want to discuss Nathan's care, Claire began, her perfectly manicured fingers smoothing an invisible wrinkle from her skirt. Specifically, your role in it. Of course, Allison kept her tone professionally neutral. What concerns you? I've noticed how he looks at you. Claire's green eyes narrowed slightly. How he seems to gravitate toward you. While I appreciate your dedication during his coma, things are different now. He needs to focus on reconnecting with his real life, his real relationships. The emphasis on real made Allison's spine stiffen. I assure you I maintain strict professional boundaries with all my patients. Do you? Claire reached into her bag, pulling out a tablet. Because I had someone look into your background. Small-town girl from Maine working your way through nursing school with student loans, single, living in a modest apartment in Somerville. She looked up, smile sharp as a scalpel. Tell me, what exactly are your intentions with my fiancé? Before Allison could respond, a commotion erupted down the hall. Raised voices and the sound of something crashing had both women on their feet. Allison's heart dropped when she realized it was coming from Nathan's room. She rushed down the corridor, Claire close behind. The scene that greeted them made them both freeze in the doorway. Nathan was on his feet, the first time he'd managed it without assistance, but his face was contorted in anger. Lucas stood near the window, hands raised in a placating gesture while scattered papers littered the floor around them. You're lying. Nathan's voice was hoarse with emotion. I saw the document on your phone. Why were you transferring company shares 2 days before my accident? Lucas's composed expression barely flickered. You're confused, brother. The medications must be. Don't. Nathan took an unsteady step forward. Don't try to gaslight me. The memories are starting to come back, Lucas. Fragments, pieces. I remember our argument in my office. You wanted to sell to Medicor, but I refused. Allison moved instinctively to Nathan's side as he swayed, her hand steadying his elbow. His skin was clammy under her touch, his heart racing dangerously fast. Mr. Richardson, you need to sit down, she said firmly. Your blood pressure. Listen to the nurse, Nathan. Lucas's voice was smooth as silk. You're obviously overwrought. We can discuss business matters once you're thinking clearly. Clearly? Nathan laughed, a harsh sound. For the first time in God knows how long, I am thinking clearly. The accident, it wasn't random, was it? The room went deadly quiet. Claire gasped softly from the doorway. Lucas's face remained impassive, but Allison caught the slight twitch in his jaw. That's a serious accusation, Lucas said softly. One that could have serious consequences for everyone involved. His gaze slid meaningfully to Allison's hand on Nathan's arm. Nathan's body tensed under Allison's touch. Is that a threat? Of course not. Just concern for your well-being. Lucas collected his briefcase, straightening his tie. I'll have my assistant reschedule our discussion about the company transition. When you're more stable. He moved toward the door, pausing beside Claire. Keep an eye on him, dear. We wouldn't want him doing anything rash. After Lucas left, Claire hurried to Nathan's side, trying to take over Allison's position supporting. Darling, you're shaking. Let me call Dr. Rodriguez. No. Nathan shrugged away from Claire's touch but kept his grip on Allison's arm. He looked at Allison, his eyes fever bright. I need to tell you something, both of you, about the night of the accident. Allison helped him back to bed, her nurse's training warring with her burning curiosity. Your vital signs are elevated. You should rest. Please. He caught her hand. Before I lose it again, the memories, they slip away like smoke. Claire perched on the edge of the bed, her earlier hostility toward Allison temporarily forgotten, in the face of Nathan's distress. What do you remember, darling? A file. Nathan's brow furrowed with concentration. In my office at home. Evidence of something. Something big. Lucas was trying to push through a merger behind my back. I confronted him, threatened to expose him to the board. He pressed his free hand to his temple. I was driving to meet someone. A journalist, I think. Then, headlights in my rearview mirror. Too close. Too fast. Nathan. Claire's face had gone pale. Are you saying Lucas tried to? I don't know. Nathan's grip on Allison's hand tightened. But I know I need to find that file. It's still in my home office. Has to be. You can't go home yet, Allison protested. Medically, you're not ready. Then you'll have to go for me. His blue eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Both of you. Claire knows the house, knows where I keep important documents, and you. He swallowed hard. You're the only person I trust completely right now. I don't know why, but I do. Claire's expression flickered between hurt and resignation. Nathan, you can't ask us to. Please. His voice cracked. If I'm right about Lucas, none of us are safe until we find that file. Allison looked between Nathan and Claire, her mind racing. Everything in her professional training screamed that this was crossing a line. But the fear in Nathan's eyes, the tremor in his voice, this was real. If we do this, she said slowly, we do it carefully. No risks, no heroics. We get in, find the file, get out. Claire stood, smoothing her dress with shaking hands. I have a key to the house, and I know the security codes. She gave Allison a look that mixed determination with lingering suspicion. Tomorrow night, Lucas has a board dinner he can't miss. Allison nodded, her heart pounding with the weight of what they were agreeing to. As a nurse, she'd sworn to protect her patients. She'd just never imagined that oath might lead her to breaking and entering. Nathan relaxed slightly, though his grip on her hand remained firm. Be careful, he murmured. If anything happened to either of you because of me, nothing will happen, Claire said with more confidence than she probably felt. We'll find the file, and then we'll prove what Lucas did. But as Allison finally extracted her hand from Nathan's grasp and went to document his vital signs, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into something much darker and more dangerous than any of them realized. The simple story of a nurse and her coma patient had twisted into something else entirely, a tale of betrayal, corporate intrigue, and attempted murder. And somewhere in the gathering darkness, Lucas Richardson was making phone calls of his own. The Richardson mansion loomed before them, a massive colonial revival silhouetted against the darkening Boston sky. Allison sat in Claire's Mercedes, parked a discreet distance down the private drive, her heart hammering against her ribs. The elegant nurse's watch on her wrist, a graduation gift from her mother, showed 7:45 p.m. Lucas's board dinner had started 15 minutes ago across town. Second thoughts. Claire's voice carried a hint of challenge as she killed the engine. Allison squared her shoulders. No. You're sure about the security system? I lived here for 8 months before. Claire's perfectly painted lips pressed together. Before the accident, I know every code, every camera blind spot. She pulled a small keycard from her designer clutch. Ready? They moved silently across the manicured lawn, keeping to the shadows. Claire's stilettos had been replaced with designer flats. Practical, but still probably worth more than Allison's monthly rent. The contrast between them couldn't have been starker. Claire in her tailored Chanel suit, Allison in simple dark jeans and a black sweater. At the side entrance, Claire typed in a code with practiced ease. The door clicked open without a sound. Lucas never changed the security protocols, she whispered. Arrogance or oversight, either way it works in our favor. The house's interior was a study in old money and modern technology. Original crown molding framed state-of-the-art smart home displays. Priceless antiques shared space with cutting-edge gadgets. Everything screamed wealth, power, and privilege. Nathan's office is upstairs, Claire murmured, leading the way. We have maybe 45 minutes before the housekeeper finishes in the east wing. They climbed the grand staircase, their footsteps muffled by thick carpet. Allison's mind raced with everything that could go wrong. If they were caught, she'd lose her nursing license at minimum. At worst, Lucas's thinly veiled threats echoed in her memory. The office door was locked, but Claire produced another key. Nathan always kept it old school in here, said he didn't trust smart locks with company secrets. The room beyond was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Boston skyline. A heavy mahogany desk dominated the space, surrounded by built-in bookshelves. Everything was immaculate, too immaculate. It's been cleaned, Claire said, voicing Allison's thoughts. Recently. Look at the desk. No dust anywhere. They split up, searching methodically. Claire took the desk while Allison examined the bookshelves. Minutes ticked by in tense silence. The drawer's false bottom is empty, Claire reported, frustration evident in her voice. If there was a file here... Wait. Allison's attention caught on something. These books, they're not just for show. They're worn, marked. Nathan actually read them. She pulled out a heavily annotated copy of The Art of War. A folded paper fluttered to the floor. Claire snatched it up, unfolding it carefully. Account, numbers, she breathed. Dates, transfer records, all authorized by Lucas using Nathan's electronic signature. Her green eyes widened. This is it. Proof he was embezzling funds, setting up the merger behind Nathan's back. A floorboard creaked outside the office. Both women froze. Mrs. Whitmore? The housekeeper's voice drifted through the door. Is that you up there? Claire's composure never wavered. Yes, Mrs. Chen, just picking up some things for Nathan. Would you mind bringing up some fresh towels to his room? We're hoping he'll be home soon. Of course, Mrs. Whitmore. They waited, barely breathing, until the footsteps retreated. We need to go, Claire whispered. Now. They made their way back downstairs, every shadow seeming to hide potential discovery. Just as they reached the side door, Claire's phone buzzed. The color drained from her face as she read the message. Lucas, she hissed. He's on his way home. The dinner ended early. Allison's pulse spiked. How long? 15 minutes, maybe less. They burst out into the night air, power walking toward the car. The paper with the account numbers felt like it was burning a hole in Allison's pocket, where they'd agreed to hide it, Claire being the more likely to be searched if caught. Headlights swept the driveway just as they reached the Mercedes. Claire shoved Allison toward the passenger side. Down! They ducked as a black SUV rolled past their parking spot. Through the tinted windows, Allison caught a glimpse of Lucas's profile illuminated by his phone screen. Claire waited until the SUV disappeared around the bend before starting the engine. They pulled out slowly, maintaining a casual pace until they cleared the property gates. Only then did Allison release the breath she'd been holding. That was too close. Claire's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. We need to get this information somewhere safe, somewhere Lucas won't think to look. The hospital, Allison said. I can hide it in Nathan's medical file. No one would think to check there, and only medical staff have access. Claire nodded sharply. Smart, but Allison. She hesitated. What we found, it's bigger than just the merger. Those transfer amounts, the offshore accounts, this is serious criminal activity. Lucas won't just lose his job over this. He'll go to prison, which makes him even more dangerous. Allison's mind went to Nathan alone in his hospital room. We need to tell Nathan what we found, but carefully. His blood pressure is still unstable. I'll have my private security team start monitoring his room, Claire said. Lucas won't be able to get to him there. They rode in tense silence until Claire pulled up at the hospital's staff entrance. Before Allison could get out, Claire caught her arm. I was wrong about you, she said quietly. When I accused you of having ulterior motives with Nathan, I was wrong. You really do just want to protect him. Allison met her gaze. We both do. Different ways maybe, but the same goal. He's going to need both of us. What we found tonight, it changes everything. Claire released her arm. Be careful with that evidence. And thank you for helping him when I couldn't. Allison nodded and slipped out of the car, the stolen documents secure in her pocket. As she swiped her badge to enter the hospital, her mind was already racing ahead. They had the proof, but proof was worthless if they couldn't keep it, and themselves, safe long enough to use it. She took the stairs to the neurology floor, not trusting the elevator's cameras. Nathan would still be awake. He always was at this hour, fighting his own battles with fragments of returning memory. She had to tell him what they'd found, had to help him understand the depth of his brother's betrayal. But as she rounded the corner to his room, she stopped dead. The door was open, light spilling into the hallway. And there, sitting casually, by Nathan's bed as if he owned the place, was Lucas Richardson. Allison's nursing instincts kicked in before her fear could paralyze her. She walked into Nathan's room with measured steps, professional mask firmly in place. Good evening, Mr. Richardson. I wasn't expecting visitors at this hour. Lucas turned, his smile not reaching his eyes. Nurse Parker, working late again? Such dedication. Nathan was propped up in bed, his face tight with tension. His eyes met Allison's, and she saw the silent warning there. Somehow he knew. Lucas suspected something. Just finishing up some paperwork, she said smoothly, moving to check Nathan's vitals. Her hand brushed against the pocket containing the damning documents, making sure they hadn't shifted. Interesting. Lucas stood, straightening his already perfect tie. I just had the most peculiar call from our housekeeper. Seems she heard voices in Nathan's office earlier. Could have sworn one sounded like his fiancée. Allison kept her movements steady, recording Nathan's elevated heart rate. I'm sure Ms. Whitmore misses spending time there. Memory is a powerful thing. Indeed it is. Lucas moved to the window, staring out at the Boston skyline. Speaking of memory, Nathan and I were just discussing his recovery, weren't we, brother? Nathan's jaw clenched. Lucas thinks I should transfer to a private facility, one with more restricted access. The threat was clear. Allison felt her own pulse quicken but forced her voice to remain professional. Any transfer decisions would need to go through Dr. Rodriguez and the medical board. Of course. Lucas turned back, smiling. That empty smile. Just looking out for my brother's best interests. Family first, after all. He picked up his briefcase. Oh, and Nurse Parker. If you happen to speak with Claire, remind her that loyalty is a two-way street. After Lucas left, Allison quickly closed the door and drew the privacy curtain. Nathan immediately tried to sit up straighter. He knows something. Nathan's voice was hoarse with tension. He came here straight from the house, did you? We found it, Allison whispered, perching on the edge of his bed. The evidence was hidden in your copy of The Art of War. Account. Numbers, transfer records, everything. Nathan's hand found hers, squeezing tight. Where is it now? Safe. But Nathan. She leaned closer, aware of how intimate this looked, but too worried to care. Lucas is planning to move you. We need to act fast. No. His grip tightened. You need to take that evidence and get as far away from this as possible. He's dangerous, Allison. The memories are still foggy, but I remember enough to know what he's capable of. A soft knock interrupted them. Claire slipped in, looking perfectly composed despite the night's earlier activities. Lucas just passed me in the parking lot. He looked pleased with himself. He's trying to transfer Nathan to a private facility, Allison explained. We need to move quickly. Claire's designer purse hit the chair with a thud. Already on it, I called in some favors. A friend at the Boston Globe is ready to break the story. We just need to get him the documents. It's not that simple. Nathan pressed a hand to his temple. A gesture Allison had learned meant his memories were fighting to surface. There's something else. Something about Medicore. The merger wasn't just about money. What do you mean? Claire moved closer, her perfume mingling with the hospital's antiseptic smell. Their research division. Nathan's face contorted with effort. They were developing something not strictly legal. Lucas wanted access to it, but I found out and threatened to expose both companies. Allison's medical training kicked in as his heart monitor showed increasing stress. You need to rest. Your body's still healing. No time. He growled in frustration. It's all there, just out of reach. The night of the accident, I was going to meet someone. A researcher from Medicore who wanted to blow the whistle. Dr. Vanessa Chen, Claire suddenly said. Both Allison and Nathan looked at her. I remember now. You mentioned her the week before the accident. Said she had proof of illegal medical trials. Chen? Allison's mind raced. Like your housekeeper? Her mother? Nathan's eyes widened. That's why Mrs. Chen stayed on after. She's been watching. Gathering information. A crash in the hallway made them all jump. Footsteps approached, multiple sets moving with purpose. Fire escape, Allison said instantly, moving to the window. Claire, get Nathan's wheelchair. No. Nathan tried to stand on his own. You two go. Take the evidence to the Globe. Not without you, both women said simultaneously, then shared a surprised look. Claire grabbed the wheelchair while Allison quickly disconnected Nathan's monitors, silencing them before they could alarm. The footsteps grew closer. Mrs. Chen, Claire said suddenly. She has a safe house, been helping whistleblowers for years. She helped Nathan into the wheelchair, her expensive manicure catching the fluorescent light. The question is, can we trust her? More than we can trust anyone else right now, Nathan grimaced as they moved him. Lucas would never suspect her. Allison's fingers flew over her phone, typing out a quick message to Dr. Rodriguez about an emergency patient transfer. Technically true, if not quite in the way he'd assume. We have maybe 2 minutes before they realize something's wrong. The fire escape creaked as they maneuvered Nathan's wheelchair down. Claire's designer clothes were smudged with dirt. Allison's scrubs caught on rusty metal, but neither woman complained. Nathan's face was pale with pain and effort, but his eyes burned with determination. They reached Claire's Mercedes, just as shouts erupted from Nathan's room above. Claire gunned the engine while Allison helped Nathan into the back seat, climbing in beside him to monitor his condition. As they peeled out of the parking lot, Nathan's head rested against Allison's shoulder. Why are you both risking everything for me? Claire met Allison's eyes in the rearview mirror. Something passed between the women. Understanding, respect, shared purpose. Because you'd do the same for us, Claire said simply, taking a sharp turn to avoid a black SUV that had pulled out behind them. Because it's the right thing to do, Allison added, checking Nathan's pulse. Because family isn't about blood, Claire finished, her voice hard. It's about who you choose to protect. Nathan's hand found Allison's in the darkness. Claire's eyes remained steady on the road ahead. And somewhere in Boston, Mrs. Chen was preparing a safe house for 3 fugitives and a stack of documents that could bring down 2 corporate empires. The game had changed. They were no longer playing defense. They were taking the fight to Lucas. But as they sped through the dark Boston streets, Allison couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much deadlier game. Mrs. Chen's safe house turned out to be a modest colonial in Brookline, hidden behind overgrown hedges and weather-worn shutters. The perfect camouflage, Allison thought. Who would look for corporate fugitives in a house that hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint since the 90s? My daughter's research partners used to stay here, Mrs. Chen explained as she ushered them through the back door. Her calm efficiency reminded Allison of veteran nurses during crisis situations. Before the accident, before Medicorps silenced them, the interior was surprisingly well maintained, with modern security systems discreetly integrated into the dated decor. Mrs. Chen led them to a ground-floor bedroom, clearly prepared for their arrival. Medical equipment, including a heart, monitor and oxygen setup, stood ready. "You've been planning this for a while," Nathan observed as Allison helped him transfer from the wheelchair to the bed. The escape and car ride had drained what little strength he'd regained. Mrs. Chen's lined face softened. "Since the night Vanessa called me, terrified. She said she had proof of illegal trials, of people dying. Then, 2 days later, you had your accident and she disappeared." Her eyes grew hard. "A mother knows when her child is in hiding. I've been gathering evidence ever since. And working in my house to watch Lucas," Nathan added, wincing as Allison checked his vital signs. "Your brother is not subtle when he thinks he's among servants." Mrs. Chen's smile was razor-sharp. "He makes many interesting phone calls in the garden." Claire paced the room, her designer heels incongruous on the worn hardwood. "We need to contact the Globe reporter tonight. The longer we wait, the more time Lucas has to spin his story," Nathan finished. "He'll paint me as mentally unstable, claim my memory loss makes me unreliable." "He's already started." Mrs. Chen pulled out a tablet showing them a breaking news alert. "Board of Directors calls emergency meeting to discuss Richardson Tech leadership concerns." Allison's hand stilled on Nathan's wrist where she'd been, taking his pulse. "He's making his move. Then we make ours," Claire said firmly. She turned to Mrs. Chen. "You said you have more evidence? Recordings of Lucas's calls?" "Better." Mrs. Chen moved to a painting on the wall, a faded landscape that had seen better days. Behind it was a wall safe. "I have the original research, data Vanessa stole from Medicorps, proof of everything." As she worked the combination, Nathan suddenly grabbed Allison's hand. "Wait, I remember something. The night of the accident. I wasn't just meeting Vanessa." His face contorted with effort. "There was someone else, someone from inside Medicorps' board." "Dr. William Morrison," Mrs. Chen said without turning. "Head of research ethics. He died in a boating accident 2 months after your crash." "Accident?" Claire's voice dripped sarcasm. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore." Nathan's grip on Allison's hand tightened. "How many people have they killed to keep this quiet?" The safe clicked open. Mrs. Chen removed a thick envelope and a hard drive. Enough to make them confident, arrogant. She laid the items on a small table. That will be their mistake. A sudden bang from outside made them all freeze. Through the window, headlights swept across the overgrown yard. "Back door," Mrs. Chen said calmly, gathering the evidence. "The basement has a tunnel, connects to the house next door. Family-owned, empty for renovation." "How did they find us?" Claire helped Allison get Nathan back into the wheelchair. "They didn't." Nathan's voice was grim. "They followed the most obvious lead. Mrs. Chen. Probably been watching her for months." They moved as quickly and quietly as possible through the darkened house. Nathan's breathing was labored, his face pale, with pain and exhaustion. Allison's medical training screamed that he needed rest, not another chase through the night. The basement stairs creaked treacherously. Above, they heard the front door splinter. Mrs. Chen led them to what appeared to be a wine cellar, pressing a hidden switch that revealed a narrow passage. "Go," she ordered, pressing the envelope and hard drive into Claire's hands. "The Globe reporter, Christopher Martinez, will be at the South End Diner until midnight. Look for the man reading." Dostoevsky. You have to come with us, Allison protested. No. Mrs. Chen's smile was fierce. I have a performance to give. The confused housekeeper waking to find intruders. It will buy you time. Footsteps thundered overhead. Nathan reached out, catching Mrs. Chen's hand. Your daughter is safe, and when this is over, she can come home. She squeezed his hand once, then pushed them toward the tunnel. Go, make them pay for what they've done. The tunnel was narrow and damp, forcing them to move single file. Claire led the way with her phone's flashlight, while Allison helped guide Nathan's wheelchair over the uneven ground. The sounds of the search above faded behind them. She'll be okay, Claire said, though her voice held a tremor. They can't hurt her without raising suspicions. Like they couldn't hurt Dr. Morrison? Nathan's bitter tone echoed in the confined space. We're past the point of them caring about suspicion. They emerged into another basement, this one filled with construction, materials, and drop cloths. Claire helped them navigate through the renovation chaos to a back door that opened into an alley. The diner's 15 blocks south, she said, checking her phone. We have 40 minutes until Martinez leaves. Not by wheelchair, Allison said firmly, noting Nathan's deteriorating condition. He needs a car. A familiar click made them all turn. Lucas stood at the mouth of the alley, gun raised. 2 men in dark suits flanked him. Actually, Lucas said pleasantly, what my brother needs is professional care. For his own safety, of course. He gestured to one of his men. Take him, carefully. No. Allison stepped in front of the wheelchair. She felt Claire move to stand beside her. Lucas sighed. Ladies, please. You've had your adventure. But did you really think you could outmaneuver me? I have resources you can't imagine. You have nothing. Nathan's voice carried unexpected strength. The evidence is already gone. Electronic copies sent to multiple sources, dead man's switches. Did you really think Mrs. Chen spent 6 months collecting evidence without a backup plan? Lucas's composure cracked, just for a moment. Uncertainty flickered in his eyes. You're bluffing, he said, but his gun hand wavered slightly. Am I? Nathan smiled grimly. Want to risk it? How many board members would stand with you if even a hint of those trials leaked? How many of your co-conspirators would stay quiet? A siren wailed in the distance, growing closer. Lucas's men shifted uneasily. Boss, one muttered. Police scanners lit up, multiple units responding to a break-in report. Lucas's face hardened. This isn't over. No, Nathan agreed as his brother backed away. It's just beginning. They waited until Lucas and his men disappeared before sagging with relief. Claire immediately pulled out her phone to call a car service she trusted. That was a hell of a bluff, she said to Nathan. About the dead man's switches. Who said I was bluffing? Nathan's eyes met Allison's. Mrs. Chen isn't the only one who's been planning ahead. I just needed to remember the pieces. Allison checked his pulse again, worried about the toll this night was taking. You need rest. Soon, he promised, catching her hand. But first, we have a reporter to meet. Time to stop playing defense. As they waited for their ride, watching police cars speed past toward Mrs. Chen's house, Allison realized they'd crossed a point of no return. The next few hours would determine not just Nathan's future, but the fate of everyone involved in this deadly game of corporate corruption. And somehow, she knew the night's dangers were far from over. The South End Diner was a slice of 1950s Americana frozen in time, all chrome fixtures and red vinyl booths. At 11:30 p.m., it was mostly empty. A few night shift workers, an elderly couple, and a man in the corner, booth reading a well-worn copy of Crime and Punishment. Claire's private car service had delivered them without incident, the driver asking no questions about their unusual group or Nathan's declining condition. Now, Allison watched the reporter from their position across the street, her nursing instincts warring with their mission. Nathan's color was worse, his breathing shallow. I should go alone, Claire said, clutching the envelope of evidence. You need to get Nathan somewhere he can rest. No. Nathan's voice was weak but determined. He needs to hear it from me. My testimony makes the story bulletproof. Your health, Allison began, won't matter if we don't end this tonight. He caught her hand. Help me, please. The diner's bell chimed as they entered. Christopher Martinez looked up from his book, his expression changing from mild interest to sharp focus as he recognized Nathan. The reporter was younger than Allison, expected maybe early 30s with keen eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Mr. Richardson, he said quietly as they approached. When my source said you'd be coming, honestly, I thought it was a trap. The trap's already been sprung, Nathan replied as Allison helped him from the wheelchair into the booth. We don't have much time. Claire slid in beside Martinez, placing the envelope between them. Everything's here. Financial records, medical trial data, proof of corporate espionage and murder. Murder? Martinez's eyebrows rose. That's a serious accusation. Dr. William Morrison, Nathan leaned forward, his voice dropping. Dr. Vanessa Chen, currently in hiding. My own accident, all connected to Medicorp's illegal trials. Martinez pulled out a small recorder. Tell me everything, start with the trials. For the next 20 minutes, Nathan detailed what he remembered. The discovery of Medicorp's secret research program, the deaths covered up as accidents, the attempted hostile takeover of Richardson Tech. His voice grew weaker as he spoke, but his mind remained sharp, connecting dots that had been scattered by his months in a coma. They were testing an experimental memory drug, he explained, something that could selectively erase traumatic memories. But the side effects were fatal, Claire finished, and they kept testing it anyway. The profit potential was too high. Martinez reviewed the documents as they talked, his professional composure cracking as he realized the scope of the story. This is, my God, half the board members at both companies could go to prison. If the story breaks, Allison said, monitoring Nathan's pulse discreetly, Lucas won't stop trying to bury it. No chance of that. Martinez pulled out his phone, quickly typing. I'm sending everything to my editor now. We'll run it online within the hour. Print edition tomorrow morning. Once it's public. The diner's door chimed. 2 men in dark suits entered, their hands conspicuously near their jackets. Behind them came Lucas, looking as immaculate as ever despite the late hour. The digital age, he said pleasantly, sliding into the booth next to Martinez. So convenient. Everything backed up to the cloud, accessible from anywhere, if you have the right passwords, of course. Martinez's phone dinged. His face went pale as he checked it. The files, they're gone. The whole system's down. Your editor's having similar problems, I imagine. Lucas smiled. Amazing what a good cybersecurity team can do. Now about those documents. It's over, Lucas. Nathan's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried steel. You can't hide this forever. Hide what? The ravings of my mentally unstable brother? The desperate accusations of his nurse and his jilted fiancée? Lucas shook his head. Who do you think they'll believe? The respected CEO who's been keeping the company running, or the man who can barely remember his own name? They'll believe. The evidence, Claire said. What evidence? Lucas nodded to one of his men who reached for the envelope. What happened next unfolded in seconds. Martinez suddenly threw his coffee in Lucas's face. Claire snatched the envelope and dove under the table. Allison pushed Nathan's wheelchair back as one of Lucas's men reached for him. And through the diner's window came the distinctive red and blue lights of police cars. Freeze! Boston PD! The elderly couple at the counter stood, drawing badges. The night shift workers moved with practiced efficiency, weapons appearing in their hands. Did you really think Mrs. Chen didn't have friends in law enforcement? Nathan's voice was fading, but his smile was triumphant. 6 months is a long time to build a case. Lucas's composure finally shattered. You don't understand what you've done. Medicorp won't just let this go. They'll already rolling over on you, said a new voice. A tall woman in a crisp FBI windbreaker entered the diner. Amazing how quickly corporate loyalty crumbles when federal agents start asking questions. Agent Monica Reynolds, She introduced herself. We've been building this case for months. Dr. Chen's evidence was the last piece we needed. She nodded to Nathan. Thank you for finally remembering, Mr. Richardson. As Lucas and his men were cuffed and led away, Allison focused on Nathan. His skin was clammy, his pulse racing. Hospital, she said firmly. Now. Wait. He caught her hand. Need you to know. Remembered something else. That night, the accident was coming to see you. Allison froze. What? You'd reported irregularities in patient care. Unusual deaths in clinical trials. Didn't know it then, but you started this, made me look closer at Medicorps. His eyes were losing focus. Funny how life brings things full circle. His voice trailed off as he slumped in the wheelchair. Allison's medical training took over. He's crashing, need an ambulance. Already on the way, Agent Reynolds said. We figured this might happen. Claire appeared at Allison's side as she stabilized Nathan. He'll be okay, please. He's strong, Allison said more confidently than she felt. He made it this far. Outside, sirens wailed closer. Television news vans were already arriving, drawn by the FBI presence. The story would break with or without Martinez's article now. But as Allison rode in the ambulance with Nathan, holding his hand while the paramedics worked, she realized this wasn't really the end. It was a new beginning. For justice, for truth, and maybe, just maybe, for love. Assuming Nathan survived the night. His fingers twitched in hers as the ambulance raced through Boston streets. She leaned close to his ear. Stay with me, she whispered. There's so much more to say. The emergency room at Massachusetts General Hospital erupted into controlled chaos as Nathan's gurney burst through the doors. Dr. Elena Martinez, the attending physician, barked orders while reading Allison's rapid-fire report on his condition. BP's dropping, heart rate erratic, possible neurological complications from overexertion. Allison rattled off, running alongside the gurney. Recent coma patient, 6 months, woke 8 days ago. You're the nurse from St. Clair? Dr. Martinez's sharp eyes took in Allison's disheveled appearance. Why wasn't he transferred properly? Because we were running for our lives, Claire said from behind them, somehow still looking elegant despite the night's events. The FBI can explain everything. As if on cue, Agent Reynolds strode in, flashing her badge at hospital security. This patient needs maximum protection. I want 2 agents outside his room at all times. Dr. Martinez raised an eyebrow but focused on her patient. Get him to CT. I want to check for cerebral edema, and someone page Dr. Harrison from neurology. Allison moved to follow the gurney, but Dr. Martinez stopped her. You're not staff here, I know you care, but she stays, Agent Reynolds interrupted. She's part of the investigation, and frankly, she knows his medical history better than anyone. The doctor hesitated, then nodded sharply. Fine. But stay out of the way unless I ask for input. The next few hours passed in a blur of tests, medical jargon, and tense waiting. Claire worked her phone continuously, coordinating with lawyers and PR teams as the story of Lucas's arrest hit the news. Agent Reynolds conducted quiet interviews with hospital security, setting up protection protocols. Allison stayed close to Nathan's room, her mind spinning between professional assessment of his condition and personal terror at possibly losing him. Around 4 a.m., Dr. Martinez finally emerged from a consultation with the neurology team. The good news is there's no bleeding in his brain, she announced to the anxious group. The bad news is his body's showing signs of severe stress. The next 24 hours are critical. But he'll recover? Claire's voice held an edge of desperation. If he makes it through the night, his chances are good. Dr. Martinez's expression softened slightly. He's fighting hard. Agent Reynolds pulled them aside as the doctor left. We need to discuss protection details. Medicorps' board is imploding, but several key players are still unaccounted for. Until we round everyone up. A commotion at the nurses' station interrupted her. Mrs. Chen had arrived, escorted by 2 FBI agents. Her usually immaculate housekeeper's uniform was wrinkled, but she held herself with dignity. My daughter is safe, she announced without preamble. Your agents found her. She's on her way to give her testimony. Claire sagged with relief. Thank God. With her testimony and the evidence, most of Medicorp's board is already cooperating, Agent Reynolds confirmed. Trying to make deals. Lucas isn't saying much, but he doesn't have to. We've got him. Allison barely registered their conversation, her attention drawn to the monitors in Nathan's room. Something was wrong. His heart rate was becoming erratic again. She rushed in, just as the alarm started blaring. Nathan was convulsing, his body rigid. Code Blue, she shouted, already moving to protect his airway. Medical staff flooded the room, pushing her aside. She backed away, her professional detachment crumbling as she watched them fight to save him. Come on, she whispered. Don't you dare give up now. Minutes stretched like hours until finally, the monitors settled into a more regular rhythm. Dr. Martinez stepped back, running a hand through her hair. He's stabilizing, she announced. But this is exactly what I was worried about. His body's been through too much trauma too fast. What can we do? Claire asked from the doorway, her face pale. Wait, monitor. Pray if you're so inclined. Dr. Martinez checked Nathan's pupils. The next few hours will tell us. Allison. The voice from the bed was barely audible, but it silenced everyone in the room. Nathan's eyes were open, unfocused, but searching. Allison? She was at his side, instantly taking his hand. I'm here. You need to rest. The memory drug, he mumbled. What they were testing, it wasn't just for erasing trauma. Agent Reynolds stepped closer. What do you mean? Control. Nathan's voice strengthened slightly. Military applications. Make someone forget, then rebuild their memories how you want. Create perfect soldiers, perfect spies. His eyes closed. That's why. Worth killing for. Dr. Martinez injected something into his IV. That's enough. He needs to rest. But Nathan fought the medication for one more moment. Allison, and what I said before about coming to see you that night. Shh. She squeezed his hand. Tell me later. No. Need you to know. Wasn't just about the reports. Had been watching. Your months before. Way you cared. Way you fought for your patients. His words began to slur as the sedative took hold. Was falling. Already falling. His hand went limp in hers as sleep claimed him. The room was silent except for the steady beep of monitors. Well, Claire said softly. That explains a few things. Agent Reynolds was already on her phone. This changes the whole scope of the investigation. If Medicorp was developing mind-control drugs for military use. But Allison barely heard them. She was lost in memories of the months before Nathan's accident. The times she'd seen him in the hospital corridors. The brief conversations about patient care. The way he'd actually listened to her concerns about the clinical trials. Had she been falling too even then? Dr. Martinez's voice snapped her back to the present. His vitals are improving. Whatever that confession was, it seems to have helped. Unburdening his soul, Mrs. Chen said wisely. Very good medicine. The sky outside was beginning to lighten, Boston's pre-dawn glow seeping through the windows. Claire arranged for breakfast to be delivered. Agent Reynolds coordinated with her team as more arrests were made across the city. Mrs. Chen sat quietly, looking satisfied as years of patience finally paid off. And Allison stayed by Nathan's bed watching his face as he slept. The man she talked to during his coma. The man who'd woken to know her voice, the man who'd apparently noticed her long before any of this began. He was still fighting. Still finding his way back to himself. Back to her. His monitors showed. Strong, steady rhythms now. Whatever crisis had nearly claimed him had passed, but Allison knew their challenges weren't over. There would be trials, testimonies, a long road of recovery ahead. She touched his cheek gently. Rest now, she whispered. I'll be here when you wake up. We have all the time in the world to figure this out. Outside the hospital windows, the sun began to rise over Boston Harbor, painting the sky in shades of hope. 2 weeks after the night that brought down Medicor, Nathan sat in the hospital's solarium, sunlight streaming through the glass ceiling. His physical strength was returning steadily, but it was the clarity in his eyes that struck Allison as she approached with his afternoon medications. "The doctors say your latest scans look good," she said, setting the paper cup of pills beside his water. "No sign of lasting neurological damage." "Thanks to you." He caught her hand before she could step back. "Dr. Martinez told me if you hadn't recognized the symptoms that night in the diner, the seizure might have caused permanent damage." Allison tried to maintain professional distance, despite the warmth of his touch. The past 2 weeks had been a delicate dance between her role as his nurse and whatever else was developing between them. "The FBI finished interviewing Dr. Chen this morning," she said, changing the subject. "Claire said the prosecution has everything they need for the trials." Nathan's thumb traced circles on her palm. Vanessa's testimony about the memory drug experiments was the final nail. "Did you know they tested it on homeless veterans, people no one would miss?" "I suspected something was wrong." Allison finally let herself sit in the chair beside him. "The patients coming through the clinical trials, their symptoms didn't match what we were told to expect. And then they'd disappear, listed as transferred, but with no destination records. That's what caught my attention too." "Well, that and the way you fought to investigate." His eyes held hers. "I remember more about that time now. How you wouldn't let it go even when administration tried to shut you down." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by distant hospital sounds and the gentle hum of the solarium's climate control. Outside, Boston's skyline stretched toward a cloudless October sky. "Claire's taking over as interim CEO," Nathan said finally. "The board approved it this morning. She'll keep things running until I'm ready to return. If I return." Allison's breath caught. "You're thinking of stepping down?" "I'm thinking a lot of things." He shifted to face her fully. "About what really matters. About who I was before the accident and who I want to be now." "And who is that?" "Someone worthy of the second chance he's been given." His free hand came up to touch her cheek. "Someone worthy of you." The moment stretched between them, full of possibility. Then a throat cleared from the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt," Agent Reynolds said, not looking particularly sorry. "But we need to discuss witness protection." Nathan's hand dropped, but he didn't release Allison's. "I already told you I'm not hiding." 3 Medicor board members are still unaccounted for," Reynolds countered, moving into the solarium. "Not to mention their military contacts. This goes higher than we initially thought. All the more reason to stay and fight." Nathan's jaw set stubbornly. "I won't let them drive me away from my life." "Our lives," Claire corrected, entering behind Reynolds. She looked every inch the CEO in her tailored suit. "We're all targets now. Mrs. Chen and Vanessa are already in protective custody." "Which is why we need to be smart about this," Reynolds insisted. "Not brave." Allison felt Nathan's grip tighten. She knew what he was thinking. Running would mean leaving behind everything they'd built. Everything they were just beginning to explore. "What if there's another way?" Claire sat gracefully in a nearby chair. "The Richardson estate has better security than most government buildings, with a few upgrades, some trusted personnel. A safe house, hiding in plain sight," Reynolds mused. "It could work, especially with round-the-clock FBI presence until the trials." "No," Nathan's voice was firm. "I won't live in a gilded cage, and I won't put anyone else at risk by staying there." "Then we find somewhere new," Allison found herself saying. All eyes turned to her. "Somewhere unexpected. Somewhere that feels like home." Understanding dawned in Claire's eyes. "The beach house in Maine." "Your family's property?" Reynolds asked Nathan. "My mother's," he corrected. "Before she died. It's not in any Richardson tech records. Lucas doesn't even know about it." His expression softened as he looked at Allison. It's where I learned to sail, where I felt most like myself. Isolated enough to secure easily, Reynolds was warming to the idea. Close-knit community, hard for strangers to move around unnoticed. We could have a team there within hours. I'll need to arrange for medical equipment, Allison said, already making mental lists, and coordinate with local healthcare providers. Does this mean you're coming? Nathan's question was quiet, meant only for her. She met his gaze steadily. Someone has to keep you alive long enough to testify. A ghost of his old smile touched his lips. Just for the testimony? We'll need a cover story, Reynolds interrupted, though her expression was knowing. For all of you. Already have one, Claire said smoothly. Nathan Richardson, recovering from his accident at his family's beach house, accompanied by his private nurse and his close friend, who happens to be his company's CEO. Nothing suspicious about that. And when the trials are over? Allison asked softly. Nathan's answer was to bring their joined hands to his lips. Then we write our own story. No cover needed. The moment was broken by Reynolds's phone buzzing. Her expression turned grave as she read the message. They found Dr. Morrison's real autopsy report, she announced. The boating accident was definitely murder, and the toxicology shows traces of the memory drug. They tested it on him first, Nathan realized, to see if they could make him forget what he knew. And when it killed him, they covered it up. Claire's voice was hard, like they tried to do with you. But they failed, Allison said fiercely. And now they'll pay for everything they've done. Nathan pulled her closer, his strength surprising after weeks of recovery. Thanks to you, all of you. Reynolds headed out to coordinate the protection detail. Claire left to make arrangements for the beach house. But Nathan held Allison in place when she tried to stand. Did I ever tell you what I thought about during the coma? He asked. When I heard your voice? She shook her head. The ocean. Waves on a rocky beach. Peace. His eyes held hers. Now I know why. You reminded me of home. Outside the solarium windows, clouds were gathering over Boston. A storm was coming. But in that moment, bathed in the last rays of sunlight, Allison felt nothing but hope for the future they would build together, if they survived the dangers still to come. The Maine coastline stretched endless and wild beyond the beach house windows. 6 months had passed since they'd fled Boston, the same length of time Nathan had spent in his coma. The symmetry wasn't lost on Allison as she stood at the kitchen counter, preparing his morning medications. No longer strictly necessary, but a routine neither of them was ready to break. The trials were finally ending. Lucas and the Medicorps executives had been found guilty on all counts: conspiracy, attempted murder, illegal human experimentation. The military connection had sparked a separate congressional investigation. Through it all, their seaside sanctuary had remained secure, though the threat had never fully disappeared. Morning. Nathan's voice behind her still sent shivers down her spine. His arm slipped around her waist as she sorted pills, his chin resting on her shoulder. Last day of testimony today. Nervous? She turned in his embrace, studying his face. The haunted look that had shadowed his eyes for so long was finally fading. Ready? He corrected. Ready for it to be over. Ready to start living again. A knock at the door interrupted them. Claire entered, already immaculate in a court-ready suit despite the early hour. Car's here. Agent Reynolds says we need to move now to avoid the press in Portland. The drive to the courthouse took them along the coast, waves crashing against rocky shores in the crisp morning light. Nathan held Allison's hand the entire way, his thumb tracing absent patterns on her palm. The prosecution wants to use my story in their closing arguments, he said quietly. The whole thing, the coma, the recovery, the escape. Our story, Allison corrected. Claire smiled from the front seat but remained focused on her phone, coordinating last-minute details with their legal team. The Portland courthouse steps were indeed crowded with reporters, but the FBI team created a clean corridor for them to enter. Inside, the familiar faces of the past 6 months waited. Agent Reynolds, looking satisfied as the case neared its end. Mrs. Chen and Vanessa, their testimony already complete. Dr. Martinez, who had flown up to monitor Nathan's health during his appearance. And at the defendant's table, Lucas, looking smaller somehow in his prison jumpsuit, his corporate armor stripped away. As Nathan took the stand one final time, Allison watched his brother's face. Something shifted in Lucas's expression as Nathan described not just the conspiracy and the attempt on his life, but the deeper betrayal of family trust. For the first time, Lucas looked away first. The memory drug wasn't just about profit, Nathan testified, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed courtroom. It was about power. The power to erase not just trauma but identity. To remake someone into whatever you wanted them to be. And yet it failed, the prosecutor noted. You remembered. Nathan's eyes found Allison's. Because some connections are stronger than any drug. Some voices call you back no matter how far you've gone. The defense didn't even bother with cross-examination. As Nathan stepped down, Lucas suddenly stood. I want to change my plea, he announced. His lawyer tried to stop him, but Lucas shrugged him off. No more games, no more lies. He turned to face his brother. I'm sorry, Nathan. I forgot somewhere along the way that you weren't just a rival for control. You were my brother. The courtroom erupted in chaos. The judge called for order. Lawyers huddled with clients, reporters furiously scribbled notes. But in the gallery, Nathan simply nodded once at his brother. No forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement, understanding. Hours later, they stood on the beach house deck watching the sun set over the Atlantic. The news was full of Lucas's confession, of Medicorp's complete collapse, of justice finally served. But here, with the waves providing nature's own testimony, none of that seemed to matter. I'm not going back, Nathan said suddenly. Claire looked up from her tablet where she'd been reviewing company reports. To Richardson Tech, I mean. It's yours now, if you want it. Claire's expression softened. I think we both knew that was coming. The board will approve the transition tomorrow. What will you do? Allison asked, though she thought she already knew the answer. Nathan's arm tightened around her waist. Mom left more than just this house. There's a small medical research foundation focused on ethical drug development. It's been dormant for years, but with the right leadership, a chance to do it right this time. Claire nodded. To help people without hurting them. And you? Nathan turned to Allison. The hospital in Portland offered you that nursing director position. They did, she agreed. But I think I'd rather work for a small research foundation, one that needs someone to oversee patient care protocols. Keep things ethical. His smile was like the sunrise. Yeah? Yeah. She kissed him softly. Someone has to make sure you don't overwork yourself, doctor's orders. Claire made a show of gathering her things, and that's my cue to head into town. Some of us still have corporations to run. After she left, Nathan led Allison down to the beach. The evening was warm enough to walk barefoot in the surf, letting the waves erase their footprints behind them. I've been thinking about memory, he said as they walked. About how we choose what to keep, what to let go. And what have you chosen? He stopped, turning to face her. The setting sun painted everything in shades of gold and promise. I choose to remember the pain because it led me to you. I choose to remember Lucas's betrayal because it taught me the value of real loyalty. And I choose to remember every moment in that hospital room, every word you spoke to me in the darkness because they became my way home. Allison's eyes filled with tears. And what about the future? What will we remember about that? Nathan reached into his pocket and dropped to one knee in the surf, holding up a ring that caught the last rays of sunlight. Everything, he promised. Every moment, every day, every breath and heartbeat and whispered word. If you'll help me make those memories. Yes, she whispered, pulling him up to kiss him properly. 1,000 times yes. Later, As stars began to appear over the ocean, they sat wrapped in a blanket on the deck. The night was full of possibilities, a foundation to build, lives to save, a love story to continue writing. "Tell me a story," Nathan murmured against her hair, echoing all those moments in the hospital room. Allison smiled. "Once upon a time there was a nurse who talked to a sleeping prince, and he heard every word," Nathan finished, "even in his dreams." The waves kept rolling in, steady as a heartbeat, as constant as love. And in the gathering darkness, two people who had found each other against all odds held on tight, ready to face whatever memories, good or bad, tomorrow might bring, together, always together. If you were in Nathan's position, waking up to a life you barely remember, would you fight to reclaim your old identity, or embrace the chance to build something new with someone who saw the real you? What would you choose, and why? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below, letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.